what is your style of negotiation? And every situation requires a different style, a different approach.
Right.
Um, Oftentimes, it's I win, you lose kind of an attitude most people have, even while negotiating a salary or negotiating a deal or what have you. What is your thought process, specifically in building up a business? How do you negotiate with clients?
So I think a very important thing which people generally tend to miss is going there with doing your homework, right? Firstly, like what is the customer looking at? What is his basic pain point? What is his need, right? I've seen sales guys going there and just start selling. You go in a meeting and, typically they just start selling. Hey, you know what? This is the product and these are the best, five things. This is the price point. This is what we'll do. You just go in a meeting and you just, open your presentation and start selling.
Hi, welcome to Sell Side Conversations. Today we have Akshay Mathur with us. He's a Chief Revenue Officer of Tyro Media. Akshay has a unique experience of launching Twitter, Facebook, Snap, and many more international brands. In our conversations with him, we'll understand about go-to-market, pricing, and a whole host of other strategies that he's employed. So Akshay, welcome to Sell Side Conversations.
Thanks for having me, Gautam.
All right, perfect.
Pleasure.
Thank you. So actually, let's start off by sort of understanding from you, how did you get into this profession? So let's sort of take back a few steps and see. Just talk us through about your childhood. What kind of student were you? Something about your parents, your education, and how did it all lead up to the first sales job that you have?
Well, pretty interesting. Like my father was in the defense forces. So I'm like that, defense kid. And my childhood was always moving, bases and, different schools and stuff like that. I'll get settled in one school and then, we'd move to a different city and stuff. So I've always been moving around. He was in the Navy. So, typically the armed forces culture was there. And like I was born in Vishakhapatnam, which is
Oh,
Andhra Pradesh at
interesting.
that point of time. And we were in Bombay for some time, in Bangalore, in Goa. And then last he was posted in Delhi. And that's how we eventually came here. Um, but, moving around, making new friends, was something that I kind of enjoyed. And in the last probably 25 to 30 years we've been in Delhi. In the beginning of
So a lot
those,
of army kids,
yeah.
because they move around all over the country,
Hmm.
tend to adapt well to different situations and circumstances. You
Yes,
think that's a trait that's helped you in your career, in your personal life?
absolutely. So, like I said, different cities, different schools, every 3, 4, 5 years that happening, adjusting and, to newer environments and stuff like that, it become a norm, right? So I think that is something that probably, from a childhood perspective, probably that was probably the starting point of something. When I was thinking about my career, probably I was more comfortable making that decision at that point of
Good.
time. But fast forward from schooling to college, when we came to a college in Delhi, I was mostly, very funnily a very creative guy.
Really? Okay.
Not a sales guy, but I love creatives. I love, software coding. And this I'm talking 1998, around that time. And then the dot-com boom
So
had
sales
come.
also is a creative process. Huh?
Exactly. It
Sales is
is.
just not very regimented, but there's a lot of creativity involved over there because it's
Yeah.
psychologically trying to sort of get in across your point to the other person, right?
Yeah, building a point of view and how do you articulate it, how do you put the narrative across. It's a creative, it's an art, right? Selling is an art, like what they say. uh, so yeah, I was into creatives, and I was a software developer at that point of time in 97, 98. This is straight out of school, college. And while I was doing my college, I was doing a professional course in computer sciences at that time. I was doing my college, and at the same time I was working in a company
Oh, really? Okay.
as a developer, right? And throughout that period, there was like 2-3 years, which I was doing all three things
So, were you designing
simultaneously.
websites, applications, software writing?
Both.
Okay.
So website was obviously it was a new thing. It was like, every business, everyone wanted to build websites at that point of time. But we started picking up software programs and software projects. One of the notable ones were we were building a project for an IIT at
Oh,
that point of time. We were building a software for them which enabled online what do you say exams that could work simultaneously for students. They could take that. So yeah, doing a lot of things at that point of time. And I had this inherent love for softwares and computers at that point in time. I think every 90s kid probably at that time did have at some point, but I probably had a little bit more. And then once I did my MBA, I realized that the best combination will be that I do sales in a software company, right?
okay.
Best of both the worlds. I
Correct.
like to talk and have a conversation and sell for softwares.
So, we'll
And
come
I
to that,
think
okay? Because you said you like to talk. So, there's a question I have, but we'll keep it for later.
sure.
Go on.
So that's how it started. At least the thought process started. And by that time, I had also started my own company, which I, at that point, post college and all, where we were building all these softwares for different organizations. So I said, hey, you know what? I'll do my MBA. I'll take up sales. But unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe, uh, my first job out of college was not with a software company. It was with
Ah,
a real estate company called JP Group, right?
okay.
And I was like, okay, let me just, figure it out. And I probably did for a year and I just did not like it, right? It was not my cup of tea. And I clearly remember I telling my manager, just 1 year inside in the this thing that, hey, I don't like this. I like selling, but not this kind of selling, right?
No, the not selling flats and
Not
properties
selling, yeah, it
to
was
Delhi aunties
golf
and uncles over
courses. And
there.
these were expensive flats. They were like 4 crores, 5 crores in, I'm saying, 2001, right? These were
Okay,
living on the villa was like a new thing at that point of time.
got you.
So while I like that, but not typically in that industry. And within a year, I joined Times Group, the newspaper print, and that's where my media journey and selling began. Dot coms and softwares were still little nascent at that point of time, but my media journey started, and that's what got into the newer industry, which is the digital industry, and like pretty joined the industry when I think it was a $50 million industry. It's a $10 billion industry
Wow.
right
So
now.
you've seen the journey from 50 million to a 10 billion.
Yeah,
You've been sort of
it's been like amazing to see that journey.
interesting. So yeah, that was good, Akshay. So let's sort of now move on to a couple of other experiences that you've had, notably with Facebook
Yeah,
and Twitter and Snap. So could you sort of walk us through how the Facebook India strategy was there, Facebook India launch for that,
right.
and then we'll talk about the other ones.
So the background to that is that post times I joined a couple of companies like the People Group, which was Shabi, and I think that is the pivotal time that the digital marketing industry was booming. After that, I joined Yahoo India, and I was in the advertising team for them, based out of Gurgaon. And then post that, I first time I joined a startup, which was a company called Comely Media.
Mhm.
It was a bunch of guys who had moved out of Yahoo. Amar Goel was the founder. He was building this entire tech company based. It was headquartered out of Mumbai. And what they realized was that in India is a market, or Southeast Asia was a market which most of these Western companies were were looking to enter at that point of time. This is, I'm talking 2009, 10, right? This was post the economic crisis in the US that had happened, and post that they were looking at markets, international markets.
Was that meltdown, the financial meltdown, the pivot for some of these companies to sort of look at India, or India just happened to be on the radar for them?
No. So India, Southeast Asia is post the economic crisis, and while the recovery was happening, most of these companies were looking to expand outside of US and the Western international markets, right? Typically in APAC. But the problem was that they did not want to invest heavily in a market which they did not understand, right? And hence came this business of entry partners, right? They would partner with a company like Comely, and Comely would help them in expansion of their monetization in these markets, right? Typically from relationships point of view, from providing sales teams, infrastructure, billing, all that headache is just taken away. So that is something that Comely identified, and Facebook was one of those companies which were trying to enter Asia and APAC at that point of time. And the typical pitch was, hey, we will build the entire infrastructure for you. It is a BOT model, which is build, operate, and transfer. We build the business, we operate it for a certain period of time, and we do understand that it's an entry partner project, and over a period of time the business transfers back to the principal partner.
Got it.
So with that understanding, we partnered with Facebook, and yeah, I think we built the entire business from scratch, build up teams. I was part of the founding team at that point of time. At that point of time, I managed a certain region, but as the business grew, I took different roles, and eventually nationally leading certain roles for sales for Facebook. Yeah, I think extremely challenging, and it's
So when you launched Facebook in India back
yeah.
in 2009-10, was the entry strategy limited to going to agencies, or was it client centric? Can you just sort of give us some
Yeah.
insights into that? Who are the main stakeholders that need to be convinced that, hey, listen, this business is here to stay?
See, we quickly realized that direct advertisers was the way forward, but you cannot avoid agencies, right? At least the large agencies. 2010 was not so big on independent agencies as it is now, right? You have probably 700 to 800 independent agencies, probably more in
Exactly.
India right now.
It's a mole. They
It's a
mushroom every now and then. They keep on mushrooming.
exactly, like,
Uh,
but at that time it was those big six, and some independent agencies like Madison, which are Indian companies, which were there. So, and the typical challenge is that when you're entry partners, the platform is new, right? Nobody knows much about the platform, nobody understands it well. In social, at that point of time in India, you would remember this social platform called Orkut.
oh yes.
Yeah.
We all were there on Orkut. Correct.
Everyone was on Orkut. Advertisers knew what Orkut was, even though there was no advertising available on Orkut, right? But everyone benchmarked social media with Orkut. And when Facebook came in, they did not understand how would you advertise, what is the platform's USP, etc. So a lot of evangelization goes when we are entry partners, and just not for Facebook. Every partner that we've got new in India, there is a full evangelizing process that goes with the industry, of making them understand what the platforms is all about.
What exactly is evangelization for the uninitiated? What does it mean actually?
So evangelization basically would mean that going to partners, going to advertisers, talking about why a user would come on Facebook,
These are
why
like typically
the
roadshows
audience
and
going on,
presentations. All
going
those
on
things.
road shows to advertisers and agencies alike, talking about the USP of the platform, how does it connect with their audiences, their customers, and what do we believe in. So doing that entire sessions with all these advertisers, something that you tend to do in the beginning, and that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to do that. So yeah, I think that is something that we initially did, and once all that has been done, business starts moving in, the monetization efforts, the entire flywheel starts.
Any notable wins back in the day where you realized this was a tipping point for Facebook in India when they decided, let's put up our own teams over here and sort of grow from it? What was the tipping point for Facebook? Um, you know,
Yeah, so the
Was
business
it a
grew.
number of clients or revenue uh, base had reached a certain value?
I
Uh,
think, yeah, a factor of both,
hmm,
because what tends to happen after 4 years, you have a certain amount of advertisers within the platform who use the platform, and I remember we probably were working with about 500 advertisers at that point after 4 years, 5 years of Facebook. And there was clients who were churning, but there were repeat customers, repeat buyers who were coming. We were scaling accounts, all the big brands. So we've taken goals of onboarding at least all the big brands in each of the verticals, whether it's Unilever of the world or P&G in India or Samsung, ensuring at least the big brands are there on the platform. So the tipping point usually is when there is about 500 advertisers plus in the system, and there is obviously some business which is double digit $1 million that comes in. The platform feels that, okay, the POC has been done, the market has been
gotcha.
yeah, and then obviously
So
uh,
fascinating. So Facebook was one of the prime examples of sort of India launch. Now,
Yeah, so in fact, we not only did India, but we did Southeast
oh
Asia.
really? Okay,
Yeah, so it was India, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, all the countries, most of the large countries within Southeast Asia. Of course, India was the largest at that point of time.
okay. So the entire APAC region was sort of managed by Comly at
Yes.
that point of time.
Yeah.
And then after Facebook, you've also had the experience of uh, managing Twitter, now called
Yeah.
X. So how was Twitter?
Twitter was also interesting because, like I said, it was a BOT model.
Hmm,
After the partnership with Facebook ended, Twitter was also at that pivotal point where they were looking at these markets. Now, just going back to your question on, what do we do evangelization with? Who are the customers? It's the ICP of the platform becomes extremely important also.
what is
Whether
ICP? Sorry.
IC is ideal customer profile,
Okay,
right? Who is the customer for that platform? And typically it is on the basis of the strength of the platform. So Twitter was very, very brand oriented platform, right? So agencies, for example, became a very important partners for us, and that's where we started our interactions with, getting into all the agencies at that point of time. And Twitter again was us, 6-7 years partnership that we had. So typically the same journey, but ICPs change, the customer profile that we go after change. And this is, I'm talking about 2014-15, after which obviously performance advertising became like extremely important, right? The performance and brand split started changing in the industry. It started becoming more performance heavy industry, and obviously that basically means that you then talk to performance
got it.
advertisers more.
Okay, so Twitter was like you said, was more agency led, and for 6 to 7 years before the BOT model sort of
Right.
ran its course. Now, Snap is a very interesting sort of a proposition. It's one of the biggest brands in the world and very popular, usually popular among teenagers and and the like. How is that experience? Because who's the typical client for that? Who are the typical users and who are the typical advertisers targeting those clients? Because most advertisers want people with disposable incomes, people who can make purchasing decisions. Now, what I believe is Snap is typically popular with 14, 15-year-old kids who don't have purchasing powers. So just sort of how do you manage that dichotomy with advertisers and clients over there?
Yeah, I think that's a myth, and
Okay.
I'll break that. But yeah, I think the experience with Snap was also pretty similar, right? When they started, and when we started partnering with them in 2018, um, they had just 4 million users in India at that point, right? And 4 to 5 million, probably somewhere in that range. And in a population of of sizable as India, 4 million users is nothing, right? But we've seen the evolution
So
of
which year did Snap start in India?
18 advertising,
Okay, 20,
monetization.
2018.
2018 is when we started. And like I said, it was a 4 to 5 million user base at that point. But during the evolution of the platform in the country, and obviously there were a lot of things that Snap did from a localization standpoint, content that was localized. They partnered with content creators in India. In the beginning, obviously all that content was US based content that was coming in. So a lot of effort in localization, language localization, all that went, which helped propel the user base from that 5 million to it's almost 200 million right now.
Wow, 200
Right,
million users.
200 million users in India,
Monthly users.
monthly users. So it's been a phenomenal journey. But just what you're seeing, it's not about 14-year-old guys. It's used 18 plus audiences are also one of the strong user base, 18 to 24 within the platform. And the brands that we're talking about, they're typically looking at that audience base with disposable income. And you'll be surprised, Gautam, that uh, on Snap, the average user who's there is using a very expensive phone, probably a $250 phone, right? It's when they started, it was very iOS heavy. In
Okay.
2018, they had almost 15% of the base iOS users.
So the rich
And
kids were using it.
yeah, and that is also typically that the app was built for iOS. It was
Okay.
not an Android app. There was an Android app, but it was built for iOS. But over a period of time, Snap has worked on their iOS product, and that is also one of the reasons that propelled audiences over there. So there is disposable income in the audience that is available, and brands just love it. A lot of Gen Zs, a lot of people who are just getting out of college, with their first, second job, with those disposable incomes are on the platform. So, uh, and as a platform, and for brands, we see a lot of performance advertising or DR advertising, happening on the platform. So it's a good mix of innovation with augmented reality. It's known for augmented reality. They're the OGs of AR technology, and ensuring that the brands get the right ROI, return on investments, on what they spend on the platform. So yeah.
Got you. So Akshay, in your experience with when international brands look at India market, and obviously they partner with a company like yours,
Yeah.
and so what are the couple of things that they expect from India? Does India market disappoint them, or surprise them in a positive way? We've got these fantastic case studies of Twitter, Facebook, where they found gold in India. But has anybody sort of found dust over here and said, okay, listen, the India market is not for me, let me go back? Has anybody bet in the dust over here?
No, actually, a lot of them do find value, right? But typically, even if you see Facebook, while the estimates that from India, they probably do about 3 billion plus in a $10 billion market. But when you look at it from global point of view, I think they would be contributing maybe 2 to 3% to global, right? But what it brings is the user base, right? India brings that. It brings scale, and that's what probably is something where they find the gold in, right? The ARPU is lesser in the market, but it is growing over a period of time. The market is growing at a phenomenal pace.
Typically,
Almost
the ARPU for
30%
India versus some of the other developed nations would be by a factor of 2 or 3
more,
more.
probably more, right?
Okay.
And
So if India is 10, the others will be 20, 30.
yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, like I said, in India, they see that the user base is great, and that's where they see a lot of value. And yeah.
But anyone who's sort of taken back the India strategy said, okay, listen, India is not for me. Have you come across anybody of that sort?
Not
Or
really.
not really? Okay.
In fact, it's the opposite. Like I said, BOT model. We have always, provided a point of view to all our partners, and they felt that it's a market that they need to invest in the long term, and that's how we've evolved. And we continue to partner with a lot of other companies. We partnered with a company called Outbrain in
Mhm.
Tairu, which is a content recommendation platform. They've been in the market for almost probably 10 years now. We've recently partnered with a performance platform called Criteo just a month back. We partnered with Activision Blizzard, which is a gaming company. All are seeing value being just present in India. And like I said, it's a growing economy. It's at a CAGR of almost 30%, the digital advertising
Yeah.
industry. And probably in another 10 years, it'll just double. Sorry, in 5 years, probably it'll double to about a $10 billion industry. So there is definitely value. Uh, the only thing is that Facebook, Google, the large tech companies, you know, translate into almost 80% of the advertising pie, right? And the 20% is then where the rest of the guys are working on. So it is basically the third leg that we're looking at, and globally, right? Whether it'll be Snap or Twitter X, we're looking at another formidable platform to kind of take that position.
Is there any other emerging platform on the horizon which you think will enter India soon? They're looking at India, something.
Yeah, so I think from social there would be a couple of
Okay.
who would eventually look at. That's one area that we feel definitely will rise. But generally, from non-social, of course, there are a lot of performance platforms they're definitely looking at India, and they're trying to grow their business here.
Isn't it too overcrowded with so many players, especially in the performance side? If I find every second that there's a new performance platform launching in India, sometimes I wonder, is this the market, enough to absorb so many players? I understand the big brands coming out here, but the other performance guys, I sometimes wonder.
Yeah, see, performance is tough, right? Performance advertising is not that easy for brands and marketers, and India as a market. It's extremely difficult to reach the expectations of what the clients are looking at their cost of acquisition of a customer, which is in fact one of the lowest, in this region. So it becomes extremely tough, but because there is scale in India, there is volume in India, it's still possible to do that. And that's how platforms are working, on their tech, and their, getting better on their targeting and their audience, being able to identify the right audience for the customer, and, emerging those tech out. So the game is still on, right?
Okay.
Apart from Facebook and Google and the big tech companies, there are a bunch of them who are working on this tech. And like, for example, I spoke about Criteo.
Mhm.
It's one of the most formidable platforms when it comes to retargeting, remarketing, user acquisition of customers. They're up there, and they're evolving. So identifying the right audience for the brand in the open internet, how do you do that? Through universal identifiers, right? uh, so yeah, there are a lot of tech companies who are trying to do that.
Okay. So, Akshay, tell me now that your company manages so many different international brands, do you end up setting up dedicated teams for each of the brands, or how's the internal team structure? Can you just sort of give a bit of an idea about how the teams are structured so that there's enough attention to each brand out there?
So how we structured is that at a leadership level, it's more unified, where we are able to, identify trends, data from each of these platforms, and are able to, build strategies for the teams below. But typically, we do build independent, dedicated teams for larger, projects and larger platforms that we work with. And the fundamental, belief that I have is that if you're able to build specific focus teams for those platforms, you're able to then do justice towards your partner. And for us, our customers are our partners, right? We're working for them and building their team and making them successful, right? And you can make and do justice to that only when you have dedicated teams and dedicated sellers going in market and going in the market and building the narrative which the platform wants us to build, right? That is a from a sales perspective. But at Tyro, we also, what we tend to do is that this is the old school of selling. Hey, we have been bunch of sales guys, I will deploy them in the market, they will go and sell your platform, right? But in today's world, what we also do is we do a lot of tech enabled selling, right? How do we enable our sales guy using tech, whether it's using platforms like Salesforce for prospecting and all that, or even building tech layers over our partners principal tech, right? How do we, for example, for platforms like Snap, we built a platform called VidTech. Now what VidTech does is it helps advertisers, creatives, create creatives at scale. So if there is e-commerce company, they tend to struggle in creating creatives, vertical video creatives at scale.
Okay.
And performance advertising requires plethora of creatives, right?
Correct.
And when I say plethora, like hundreds and thousands of creatives are required to optimize, to show the right communication to the right audience, and churn and wean out the ones which you don't, and it's manually impossible to do. So we built this entire beautiful tech piece which lies on top of these platforms. It takes feeds from the advertiser. So if it's an e-commerce company having this shirt in black, blue, green, it'll use permutation combinations of communication, image, offer, everything, and build like you know hundreds and thousands of creatives, and then push them on all these platforms on the partners
Wonderful.
platform.
So is this solution also available as a ready-made box for other people to use,
Yeah.
or is it only for your set of partners in India?
No. So it's not just for partners. We use them definitely for our partners, our advertiser partners, and obviously platform partners. But it's available
Got
independently
it.
also for advertisers to use. But when we typically partner with a company who is our partner, we have to build certain changes within the platform, tweak them so that it becomes easier for the sales guy to navigate and do the sales, right? So I think it's a combination of just not, field sales and sales force, but it is also how do you enable them with technology and stuff. And that's how we're trying to change the game for our partners in India.
Interesting. So actually, now let's sort of focus on a bunch of other items. Given your vast experience in sales and business development and leading teams, so let's sort of talk about the human aspect of of the entire process, because you've
Yeah.
led large teams, you've built large businesses. Uh, so just want to sort of understand from you some of the tenets that you believe in. Uh, Earlier in the conversation, you said you like to talk, and so oftentimes I hear one of the common reasons I got into sales because I like to talk to people,
Right.
and I find that to be the most idiotic
Yeah.
statement most people make.
Correct.
So, what is your take on that?
No, absolutely. See, being able to talk is one of the basic hygienes, right?
Uh,
In sales, right? You should be able to talk and communicate. But more important than just being able to talk is the attitude of
mm,
selling, right? Like you should have the right kind of attitude. Like I know a bunch of guys, some of them are great friends and colleagues in the industry. Like they can talk well, but some of them don't have that attitude of selling, right? The right, attitude. So I think attitude makes a lot of difference. It's not just like you rightly said about being able to have the gift of the gab. But there are a couple of things when at least I hire and when I look at people in sales, there are certain values, core values that we look at, and I specifically look at is one of them is being entrepreneurial, and that's one of the values within Tyro that I very closely look at, right?
how do you judge that?
So being entrepreneurial is somebody, if you what I do is I place them in situations. I give them hypothetical situations and see what is their thought process in coming out of it, right? And and entrepreneurial is just basically being that, hey, you're not a guy who's just been told to do something and you just typically do that. But if you get stuck somewhere, how do you apply your mind and get out of it? And this is typically in companies, especially which are startups. Like, I have now been in startups for the longest time after my Yahoo stint.
Hmm.
I think I've been in a startup for the longest time, and that is what has taught me that, hey, you want to survive in this industry, and you not just industry, in this world, you need to constantly innovate. You need to constantly think, out of new things. So I think being entrepreneurial is, up there in being, a sales guy. Honestly, anything that you do is about selling.
Because oftentimes what happens is initially when you hire somebody, what you think is an entrepreneurial streak could also be sometimes just craziness,
Yeah.
or just somebody's just outright maverick
But
in the wrong way also.
But some of the crazy guys are the best sales guys I've seen. You won't believe, sometimes they can be a pain in the ass, right?
Uh.
But some of them are really good in the way they navigate, the way they do storytelling, the way they build relationships with customers, the way they negotiate, the way they push the customers. It's good to have some crazy guys. Yeah, not the crazy streak, but yeah, yeah.
So you just mentioned negotiation, and that brings me up to this question, which I often ask: what is your style of negotiation? And every situation requires a different style, a different approach.
Right.
Oftentimes, it's I win, you lose kind of an attitude most people have, even while negotiating a salary or negotiating a deal or what have you. What is your thought process, specifically in building up a business? How do you negotiate with clients?
So I think a very important thing which people generally tend to miss is going there with doing your homework, right? Firstly, like, what is the customer looking at? What is his basic pain point? What is his need, right? I've seen sales guys going there and just start selling. You go in a meeting and, typically they just start selling. Hey, you know what? This is the product and these are the best, 5 things. This is the price point. This is what we'll do. You just go in a meeting and you just, open your presentation and start selling. I think you can be a great negotiator if you start listening from the day zero, right? And if you listen closely to what the customer wants, and if you've done the homework before about the industry and what his needs are and where his pain point is, you will by the end exactly know, what and at what price point he'll be able to buy, and you will be able to push him, right? I think that entire journey of what we call spanko, right, prospecting and then coming on to negotiation, uh, is extremely important. You cannot skip any part of it, right? So I think that becomes a very, very crucial part in your negotiation tactics. Not just go to negotiation directly, but just understanding the need of the customer, and then suggesting the right things. Another thing in negotiations that I've seen is offering the right solutions. Sometimes salespeople get or buckled under pressure of their quotas and soft targets. Hey, I need to sell these 4 things, and I just need to push these 4 things to all customers without understanding whether he needs it or doesn't need it. So a lot of times, if you are a solution seller and if you're just you understand what will work for the customer and just be a consultant to the customer, he will be able to buy more from you. But if it is the right solution, if it's the wrong solution, nobody will.
But actually, I like the term used, consultant, approach, or a consultative approach in selling.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, at least in media sales, and we've been both been part of the same industry. There's targets to sort of sort of a quotas to be made, monthly, quarterly, yearly targets. Oftentimes, the frontline sales guy will just be like bullheaded and sort of do that.
Right.
And that is when the whole approach of building a relationship or consultative approach sort of goes out of the window.
No,
How do you
yeah.
manage that dichotomy
No,
over there?
that's why I said that. So, for example,
Hmm.
consultative approach would not just mean that, hey, this product of mine is better, and you should buy it, right? A lot of times, when you are listening to your customers, you tend to understand that, hey, there is something else in the market, and it may not be a competition, but you're just listening to them, and and that there is a tool available in the market which would definitely help the customer, right, in solving that problem. And in conversation, you're able to help them, and they look at, there is a value that you end up adding in that conversation, and hey, they end up saying, hey, you know what, the next time Akshay or Gautam comes, to meet me, it's a value exchange conversation, right? He ends up telling me four things which end up adding, and it's not a sales thing.
It is,
All meetings are not sales meetings. There are some meetings where you just go for value exchange, and where you're able to part some knowledge and wisdom to the customer, and he appreciates it in the long run, and the next time when you come to offer a solution which you feel is right for them, they listen to you.
gosh. So, have you ever been in a situation where you walked away from a deal, very well knowing that this deal could make your monthly
All the
target or
time.
quotas or whatever? How do you reconcile with the fact that you're walking away from business and it's going to hurt you because you're not going to make your quota?
All the time. In fact,
And how do
I'm
you sort
going
of
through
tell
that.
your team, listen, it's okay, show them the larger picture and then move away? How do you manage that?
In fact, I'm going through that, right now also. Before we walked in, like yesterday, I was having a conversation with our team about some deal that we're trying to do. And I think that's part of being entrepreneurial, right? It is not in today's day and age, and at least especially in startups, not just about top line. And salespeople generally, and not nothing wrong in that. They tend to just look at it from a top line point of view. But as a leader, when you're building a business, when you're growing it, and when you know the tenets of what is important at the bottom line, what will make a strong business, how should you negotiate that is a value exchange for us and the customer. You're able to do that. So there are deals that we walked out of. A lot of times I have walked out, and currently also there is some deal where we would not end up making money, and it's all right.
That's the right
No,
thing to do.
that is
And
the
that is
right
a
thing to.
discipline you sort of tell a team, walk away from
Yeah.
a bad deal.
Yeah, you become the bad cop, the guys hate you, but you what my style of working is that I explain them why. The why is extremely important, right? And hence having that entrepreneurial conversation, right? Hey, why is this particular deal not good for us? What will we get out of it, and what will we not get out of it? Explaining that, and I've generally seen the team just typically understands, and how that helps is that the next conversation that they start doing with customers, they adjust for that. So it's always okay to say no. Sometimes, obviously, if it is a large deal and stuff like that, and you probably building a relationship for the future, you may just say, okay, we'll do it, but probably next time we may not do that.
Got it. Actually, oftentimes in media sales, especially, there is a tendency, and I've seen that with some sales leaders in some organizations, when they hire frontline salespeople or at least front to medium level salespeople, they often hire women, and that to attract to women, huh? And they are supposed to be, sort of um, used to sort of open the gates or open the account. What is your thought on that? You think that kind of strategy works, or that is old school strategy in today's, especially in digital industry, media industry that we are a part of? Does that strategy work?
It is old school. It is completely old school. I seriously don't look at that. It's not about being a guy or a girl. It's basically, like I said, the attitude that matters, right? That is my benchmark on whether we should hire, whether the person fits into the core values or not. it doesn't matter, because the customer now on the other side is very evolved, right? When you go to them, like I said, they're looking for value exchange. They're not looking at who's coming and servicing me, right? It's more about that. So for us also, when we hire our teams, we need to ensure that they're able to do the right kind of
Got
conversations
it.
which make sense for the customers, which make sense for us. I think that is where the industry is also moving. I think it's completely old school.
Now, under what circumstances would you fire somebody from a team? For
I
not
think
meeting his targets once a while or consistently, or bad behavior or bad attitude, or combination of all of the above?
uh, it's less of targets, but more about our core values. If somebody is not coming in with core values, whether it's integrity or it's entrepreneurial, there are a set of core values that we have. They don't come within that, and consistently over a period of time, we look at that. But of course, performance in the long run, there are processes that we've built out. There is performance PIPs that we go through, improvement programs. uh, but yeah, I think core values is something non-negotiable within the organization that we really really look at.
Got it. Interesting. So, actually, moving on, let's talk about the process of sales pipeline, or how to build a sales funnel.
Right.
Back in the day, everybody used Excel sheets to sort of, categorize hot, warm, cold, and there was sort of a lot of vagueness to that process, because it's subjective. I may feel cold, I may feel hot. There's not a real science to it. Today, you have tools, Salesforce, for instance, and some other bunch of tools. When you build a large sales pipeline or a large revenue base, you obviously need to use some sophisticated tools to manage your revenue process, to have visibility to the upper management on the business flow. Any thoughts on that? How do you manage that?
Yeah, so it's definitely, as we have multiple businesses like within Tyro, right? We have like a Snap business, a partnership business, and then we have a Tech business. There are multiple businesses that end up converging, right? And at a leadership level, you want to have singular dashboards which talk to you about how forecasting would happen, how is productivity per salespeople, different metrics that you can judge on. And it's fine if it's a small business, right, in the beginning, but and you use Excels and stuff like that. But as this grows, the complexity of getting those numbers right, it becomes extremely hard, and you have to eventually, lean on to certain, tech tools and platforms. So for us, we use Salesforce, for example, very, very religiously. We spend a lot of time customizing the tool for our needs and our industry. Um, and like you rightly said, inputs definitely come from the sales teams across the country, across the region. And then you have to set the right processes to get to the right
What are
numbers,
those
right?
processes?
Processes are things like you have to have right cadences. It's extremely important to have those daily cadences with the sales team. The leaders need to have those cadences with the sales team. uh, you know to be able to move those entries, almost at real time basis as conversations happen, becomes extremely important. Because what tends to happen is the sales guys would put those entries in the pipeline and then end up forgetting. So what another thing that we also see is the aging of the pipeline, right? You made an entry and not made any changes for like 30 days, it's a red flag, right? So those cadences become important to see the health of the pipeline. And obviously there is some human element that does come, and the judgment of the leader, the first level skip leader, the second level skip leader, the national leader, it gets filtered completely, and then moving the pipeline, right? It helps sales leaders to also look at, like I said, productivity per salesperson, right? Where are conversations happening? Where are meeting happening? What is the ACV of the conversation, average contracting value that is happening? What is the pitch value that is going in the market? There are multiple points that you can see if you have those
Any rule of
tools.
thumb between, um, let's say, this is the value I've pitched, let's say 100 rupees has been pitched. Will 100 fructify over there if your pipeline shows across multiple clients a value of 100,
Yeah.
how much would you account for it in real
A
times?
healthy
What?
pipeline would say about 40 to 50% is the conversion ratio of the pipeline. So if you pitched 150 should get converted, and you should aim towards that. So if you're anywhere below that, if you're in that 20 range, there are things that you need to work upon. And also the ratio between, like I said, the pitch value versus number of pitches that are going in the market. What are the new pitches that are going in the market? There are multiple things that sales leaders should be looking at, because uh, another thing is that you may end up working with or pitching to 100 advertisers or 200 advertisers every month. But hey, if the pitch value is just $2,000 or $1,000, boy, you will never make a business out of it, right?
Correct.
So the pitch value becomes very essential to track. Sales guy will say, hey, you know what? I'm talking to 50 guys. It has no meaning if it is just $1,000 pitches, right? So you'll be able to make those corrective actions. Is what I'm saying. I'm not saying you penalize them and stuff, but you'll be able to guide the team of where are you getting stuck.
So how often do you all sort of look at those numbers or dashboard at your
So
level and the teams below you?
we have daily dashboards coming in. We check things like DRR, which is daily run rate of the business. It's as close as that. Every day for last yesterday, we'll see what is the daily run rate.
And this is the deals that have come in
Deals which have come in, deals which are getting delivered out on a day-to-day
day to day
basis.
basis. Okay.
Day-to-day basis, and how is the fluctuation in that DRR happening, and where is that fluctuation coming in from, and then going in detail of those. That is the delivery part, and then also looking at new businesses coming and pitched every week. That is mostly a weekly thing. So we have daily, then we have weeklies, and then obviously months are just to uh, look and reflect back on what the team has been doing, and if there is a change in strategy for the quarter
Got it.
that needs to be done.
So interesting. So let's talk about the role of motivation. We have all seen that movie Rocket Singh, back in the day, where mostly there's a boss who's like a Hitler and who's leading by fear.
Hmm.
Now, what is your experience of leading a large team and delivering a large revenue goal? Is it a combination of fear and motivation, or only motivation and the right principles? What's your personal style, and what is the style that you think generally works? Because oftentimes in sales, I've heard people say, you know what, my ass is on the line.
No, I think it's important to be a little bit more self-disciplined is the best way, right? And that happens, or that tends to happen if people understand what the goal is and whether that's achievable. And when those goal setting happens, the KPIs are being set for individuals. They have a plan of action. They know exactly how those things will move out. And when you are able to kind of have those conversations in the beginning and in between, uh, is where there is the you don't need to then be a micromanager and just be after them on a day-to-day basis. My style is mostly to empower guys to just ensure that they do understand what the goals is, the criticality of the goals, and then the strategy is being formed of in the beginning of the month of what they want to achieve, and then let them do the magic, right? I think it's more of that rather than being a micromanager, just being on top of them and just constantly changing their strategies and confusing the hell out of them also, right? uh, I think that doesn't work out. You have to trust in people, trust in the process. Actually, if you have the processes right, I think people I have the innate belief that people want to do the best.
Got it. So just sort of as we wrap up, one sort of a final question that I have, and I generally ask this to most people is: can sales as a skill be taught, or are people born with innate selling skills?
No, I think there is one thing which is about it being natural. which are some of the soft skills that we spoke about, right? Being able to talk and having the right attitude and stuff like that, which you can't change people. It's extremely difficult to change one's attitude, right? If you have a certain set of attitude, you have it or you don't have it, right? And the second thing is the process. I think the process part can be taught, right? We hire a bunch of guys who are generally not from the industry, sometimes not even from sales, but we feel the guy has the right attitude. We do hire that person, and then you go make him go through the process of the sales training. Hey, how do you make a great sales pipeline? How do you do negotiation? We do the trainings with the person. There's a lot of mentoring that happen, one-on-one mentoring. I have mentored people 3 levels down, uh, when I figure that, hey, he's struggling and is not from the industry, right? And when you do that and you build a process for them, and they come in the sales pipeline process, you know uh, they end up being sometimes the best sales guys you have. So I think it's a combination of both. You need to have the right attitude. You cannot teach people attitude, and you cannot change them. You need to be
Absolutely.
born.
Attitude, you're born with it.
You have to be born with it,
Correct.
right? And it has obviously background and your childhood. There are a lot of
A lot of variables that go into that.
variables go in building that attitude. But if you have that, then it's all about the process.
Right. Perfect. So great, Akshay. Akshay, this was very enlightening conversation. I hope people watching it sort of pick up some cues from it and sort of try to implement it. Again, thanks for being on Sell Side Conversations. Hope
Love
you had
the
a good
chat.
time.
Love the chat. Thanks,
All right.
Gautam.
Thanks. All right.